Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Telescope Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Everyone in this place, if you could do a handstand, I want to see your feet up in the air right now. Wave them around. That's right.
Hello, welcome to the Telescope Podcast, the show where we look at geek culture through the spyglass of faith. Matthew Saple Anderson here, pumped to be doing another show. I am a little tired at the moment because we've got a new puppy, and that little darling is waking me up at night to go to the bathroom, and I'm a little tired, but you know what? I will press on. Well, let's get right into it. I am excited to talk a little science, and then I'm going to talk a little Star Wars, which, as you know, is one of my favorite topics. And maybe I do Star Wars a little too much in this show, but you know what? I just can't help myself. It's too enjoyable. All right, let's bring in the science chimes. They're such happy little chimes. They kind of remind me of Mr. Rogers or something. I don't know. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about the NASA Parker probe. And the story comes from sciencenews.org. And the title is NASA's Parker probe is about to get up and close. That's not even what it says. NASA's Parker probe is about to get up close and personal with the sun. And I'm just going to read the first few paragraphs and then chat a little bit about it. NASA's Parker solar probe is about to embark on one daredevil stunt of a space mission. Slated to launch August 4th, the probe will be the first spacecraft to swoop through the sun's outer atmosphere, or corona. Is a roiling even a word? Maybe it's supposed to say boiling. Of course, can anything really boil in outer space? I don't know. Roiling, I can't even get over that word. That word's making me laugh. A roiling inferno of plasma, heated to several million degrees Celsius. Parker will whip around the sun 24 times over the next 7 years, skirting within about 6 million kilometers of the sun's surface, more than 7 times as close as any previous spacecraft. At its nearest approach, Parker will hurtle through the corona at about 700,000 kilometers per hour, making the craft the fastest human-made object in the solar system. The probe would need only about a second to zip from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. Parker's close-up observations of the corona and the solar wind, the torrent of charged particles that the sun spews into space, could help resolve long-standing mysteries about the inner workings of the sun's atmosphere. And the new data may improve forecasts of space weather that endanger spacecraft, astronauts, and technology on the ground. The trove of new data gathered by this probe is going to answer a lot of questions that we couldn't answer in any other way, says Craig DeForest, a heliophysicist at the Southwest Research Institute in Boulder, Colorado, who was not involved in the mission. There's a tremendous amount of anticipation, he says. All right, well, there you go. I'm gonna stop there. The story goes on to give more details, and I'll, of course, put the link in the notes. But I just think it's a really interesting story about space exploration. I wonder what that spaceship is made out of to be able to withstand that much heat. I mean, that's crazy. Crazy, and really fun, really cool that we're doing all this stuff out in outer space. Well, speaking of stars, it's time to talk a little Star Wars. Now, on this episode, I'm talking about Lando. Actually, I'm talking about Star Wars Episode 9. And it's a little early to be talking about Star Wars Episode 9 because there really has not been any substantial information released. But this story just kind of got my wheels cranking. I should clarify. There was a story on StarWarsNewsNet.com. And the story's called It's Almost Official. Lando will return in Star Wars Episode 9. And that story just kind of got my wheels cranking. on how Lando could fit into Episode 9. I read the story, I took a shower, I got ready for work, I drove to work, and the whole time I'm thinking about this. And part of the reason I was thinking about it is because there were a lot of negative comments in, the comment section below the story. And, me, I'm pretty positive. And so, hearing all those naysayers just kind of got me. And I started thinking of how you could fit Lando into the existing story. And I got pretty excited, honestly. I really got excited about it. So I'm going to make the case for Lando. And I'm going to share how I think he could fit into Episode 9. And basically, I'm going to give my version of how I would start Episode 9. First, let me just lay a little groundwork. A big beef I have with Episode 8 is I didn't like where the story left off. I was actually okay with how they used Luke Skywalker. I mean, it was just really different than people expected, and I know it let people down. But even with that, I can see the bright side. So you see, I'm kind of the eternal optimist. But one thing I really didn't like is how the story ended up. It's not poised for an exciting conclusion. It's just kind of, I'm wondering to myself, okay, where is this story going to go from here? It just, the chess pieces aren't set up in a really interesting way, in my opinion. And it just kind of it's almost like they just burned everything down, and I don't know, I just don't know where it's going to go. So I'm putting myself in J.J. Abrams' shoes, and I'm thinking, man, if I was in his shoes, I would be scratching my head and thinking, number one, I need to hit a home run to make up for the dissatisfaction with The Last Jedi. Number two, I've got to complete a 9-movie cycle, so it's got to be kind of epic. Number three, the story just seems a little bit out of gas. I mean, I guess you got an interesting relationship between Kylo and Rey to go on, but I don't know. It's just not set up in a really exciting thing for an obvious finale like it was for Return of the Jedi. I don't know. I guess you could argue, I'm just playing devil's advocate with myself as I read this and as I'm thinking, you could say after The Empire Strikes Back, well, what do they do now? Luke didn't complete his training, Han's in carbonite, Luke lost his hand, the Death Star is being built. You could basically make the case that the good guys lost, and where are you going to go from there? So, I don't know, maybe I'm overblowing my criticism of The Last Jedi. But number four, the fans are in a weird place. No one's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for Episode 9. I mean, us hardcore fans, we're excited, but a lot of people are like, well, The Last Jedi kind of let me down, or really let me down. And they're kind of crossing their arms and saying, we'll see. And so that's when I bring in Lando. And here's how I think Lando could fit in really, really beautifully. Now, first of all, let's lay some groundwork. Lando, who was he? He was a suave, shady businessman, a leader of an off-the-books mining colony. Then he loses it all after his deal with Vader falls apart. He joins the rebels, right, and fights in that battle at Death Star number 2, and the Death Star is destroyed. And what does he do after Return of the Jedi? Now, forgive me, if you're listening and you are a more knowledgeable fan than I am, which is entirely likely, you might actually know some things Lando did, because maybe they flushed it out in some of the other canon materials that I don't know about or I haven't read. So forgive me if I'm a little ignorant. But I'm going to just speculate, what did he do after Return of the Jedi? Now, if Lando was the kind of leader who can put together something like the Cloud City, right? That's this mining colony. It's a big operation. So Lando has some real leadership talent. So I'm just going to go ahead and speculate that after the second Death Star is destroyed, he is going to go back, pull on his connections, and do something, and probably something big, especially because he's had a lot of time to work, and now he's in his, retirement years. He's probably done something really amazing with his life, and I think he is exactly the kind of leader with exactly the kind of connections who can put together a convincing resistance and really help these characters who now are just have nothing. The First Order's really destroyed the Resistance. So here's my opening crawl, right? And I literally wrote this in 5 minutes, so it's not extremely thought through, but here's my opening crawl for Episode 9. If I'm J.J. Abrams, I'd say something like this. Princess Leia tragically and unexpectedly dies, leaving Poe, Rey, Chewie, and Finn to rebuild the Resistance. Meanwhile, Kylo Ren gathers the Knights of Ren to help consolidate his power and search for the remaining leaders of the Resistance, who have gone to seek out an old and powerful ally, Lando Calrissian. It's nice, it's clean, it sets up the story, right? You can see, you could have Act 1 of the film showing Kylo Ren consolidating power within the First Order and kind of getting his ducks in a row. And now he's got his Knights of Ren, which were pretty much ignored in The Last Jedi. They were given a little lip service, like Kylo ran off with a bunch of other students from Luke's Jedi Academy, presumably the Knights of Ren. But that's all the attention they get. And I'm thinking, okay, JJ invented those guys. He's definitely going to bring them back, and we're going to get to see them. I think fans are excited to see them. And that's the perfect way to make Kylo Ren's ascent to power convincing. But what about Lando? Is it worth it to bring back this minor legacy character? I think yes, for the reasons I've already said. His position and influence could pull together a convincing amount of support to confront the First Order. And the Resistance would, no longer really be the Resistance. It would be like the coalition of Lando. Like, I can imagine a fleet of mismatched ships from a bunch of different worlds, a bunch of different systems, just gathering together, right? It wouldn't just be like TIE fighters versus X-Wings. It would be a bunch of random ships versus the First Order's, more unified looking fleet. And that would be super cool. And also remember, Lando has a long history with Chewbacca, right? Going all the way back to the most recent film about Han Solo. And so Lando's got this relationship with Chewie that goes all the way back to when they were young. Also, I just said that kind of funny. Also, it would be believable that Maz Kanata would know Lando, right? Maz knew Han, and they are kind of in the same stream, and Maz has been around the block. And if Lando is kind of a big shot in some small corner, right? A big shot in some small corner of the galaxy, there's a good chance that Maz would know about Lando as well. There's even a good chance that when Han went back into his smuggling life, that maybe he had some contact with Lando that wasn't explored in the other movies. So it's completely believable to bring back in this legacy character, and he's the perfect guy that could give some new might to the Resistance and make the movie interesting, kind of like resuscitate the two sides, as Kylo consolidates his power. We see the Knights of Ren. That's really interesting. Lando brings in influence, support, supplies, ships, to the Resistance or the new coalition of Lando. And that, I think, would make a really nice Star Wars movie. And as far as Rey and developing her Jedi abilities and what's going to happen with her, honestly, I have no idea. I don't know what they're going to do with her and her character, and maybe I will speculate on that as time goes on and we get more information coming out about Episode 9. But that's how I would start it. That's how I would set up the chess pieces on the board for maybe like Act 1 of the film. So I would love to hear your thoughts. How would you start Episode 9? Go on Facebook, My Savior's Anthem, Music and Podcasting. Let me know. That'd be great. But now, it's time to put away our lightsabers and the keys to the Millennium Falcon, and it's time to
Bring forth the telescope!
Well, this is the show where we look at geek culture through the spyglass of faith. And friendship is a major theme in Star Wars. On the light side of the Force, friends stick together and sacrifice for one another. On the dark side, people use one another they use one another like as rungs in their ascent to power. And Jesus said to his disciples, I will never leave you or forsake you. Now, that's an amazing promise that God gives us. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. Didn't Obi-Wan say something like that? Luke. The Force will be with you, always. Something like that. Well, Jesus said, I will never leave you or forsake you. And it's a great promise. And so I want to encourage you, number one, think about Jesus in those terms, that he will never leave you or forsake you. Put your faith and your trust in him. Number two, invest in the people that you love and who love you. And don't let those relationships grow cold, right? Your spouse, your friends, your mom, your dad, call your mom. Tell her you love her. Call your dad. Tell him you love him. Invest in those people, and your life will be happier and richer for it. So, hey, thanks for listening to another episode. I started it tired, but I got kind of pumped up thinking about Star Wars and Lando. So, thanks again for listening. My name is Matthew Seipel Anderson. Do me a favor and connect with this podcast in a stronger way and subscribe to it. Either open up your podcast app. If you have a Apple device, open up the little purple podcast icon. Look up the show, The Telescope, Geek Culture, and Faith, and subscribe. Or if you use another, like I use an app called Overcast. I just met a guy and was talking to him about the show, and he listens on Pocket Cast. So go grab one of those apps and subscribe. Or maybe you are listening to this in Spotify. Subscribe. Or maybe you are on YouTube. You get the picture. So that'd be great. And thanks again for listening. I will talk to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
What's up, everybody? Everyone in this place, if you could do a handstand, I want to see your feet up in the air right now. Wave 'em